Fake HOA reported man for noise. He was hosting a police charity event. Part 1. Willow Heights was the kind of place that wore its quiet like a badge of honor. The lawns were symmetrical, the trash bins rolled out at the same time every Thursday morning, and the houses were painted in varying shades of beige and gray, none too bold, none too loud. It was the picture of suburban peace, and nothing threatened that picture more, in Karen Whitlow's mind, than noise. At 53, Karen had taken it upon herself to become the guardian of tranquility in Willow Heights. Though the Homeowners Association had legally dissolved years ago after financial mismanagement, she and a few neighbors formed a neighborhood standards committee, unofficial but fiercely active. They sent out warning letters, made calls to city departments, and proudly monitored disruptive activity. To Karen, enforcement was not just policy, it was purpose. So when music drifted across the street from 1129 Sandhill Drive on a warm Saturday morning, Karen's eyes narrowed. It wasn't even noon, and there were voices, laughter, bass, and worst of all, cars parked along the curb. That house had just been sold a month ago to someone named Deshaun Brooks, a 35-year-old black man from the city who had moved in quietly with his younger sister. No one knew much about him, only that he drove a pickup, wore athletic hoodies, and had a dog named Duke. Karen hadn't welcomed him. She told herself it was because she didn't know what kind of people he was bringing into the neighborhood. And now the first signs of trouble had arrived. Karen pulled out her phone and opened the Willow Heights group chat. Karen W. FYI, Sandhill Drive is turning into a block party. Cars everywhere. Music already too loud. The reactions came quickly. Glenn R. Unbelievable. Some people think the rules don't apply. Nancy K. Karen, call code enforcement again if it gets worse. Karen W. I'll do you one better. I'm calling the cops now. And she did. 911. What's your emergency? Karen's voice was crisp and confident. Yes, I'm in Willow Heights, and there's a large gathering going on at 1129 Sandhill. Loud music, unknown people walking up and down the street. Possible illegal event. I'm concerned for safety. The dispatcher asked, Is anyone fighting or threatening others? No, but it's very disruptive, and they don't belong here. Karen didn't realize how much weight those last 5 words would carry. Meanwhile, Deshaun Brooks was setting up tables in his backyard. On them were trays of food, water bottles, and back the blue t-shirts for sale. He wore a black shirt with the words United for Officer Diaz printed across the front. Deshaun's older cousin, Officer Raymond Diaz, had been killed in the line of duty the year prior. It had devastated the entire family, and Deshaun, who worked in logistics for a nearby school district, had taken it upon himself to organize a memorial fundraiser. All proceeds would go to the Diaz family's scholarship foundation for children of fallen officers. He'd worked on this for 3 months. He'd applied for the city's temporary event permit. He'd notified neighbors via flyer. He'd even lowered the volume on the music when the elderly couple next door mentioned they were napping. He was doing everything right, until 2 police cruisers rolled up and blocked his driveway. The moment was caught on video. A neighbor's Ring camera captured Karen standing across the street, arms folded, talking into her phone and pointing. Behind her, guests looked confused as uniformed officers approached the driveway of 1129 Sandhill. Deshaun walked forward, eyebrows raised. Everything okay, officer? We got a noise complaint and report of suspicious activity. Deshaun blinked. Suspicious activity? This is a charity event. I sent in the permit paperwork. We've got officers on the invite list. From behind the fence, someone shouted, He's fundraising for the Diaz family, man. Don't you recognize the name? The officers exchanged looks. One of them, Officer Tam, stepped aside and began making a call. The other kept speaking with Deshaun. Karen, meanwhile, kept recording. She's live streaming, someone said. Deshaun finally turned to her. Ma'am, did you call the cops on a charity event for a fallen officer? Karen snapped. I didn't know what it was. You had loud music and people wandering around. How was I supposed to know this was legitimate? The crowd fell silent. Deshaun stared at her. You could have just asked. The camera zoomed in as Karen looked away. Within hours, the video was on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Karen shuts down police charity BBQ, gets educated real quick. Justice for Diaz. Hitorshirashimash Karen B's kindness? Fundraiser, not felony. The comments were brutal. She really called the cops on someone raising money for a cop's family. Imagine thinking your discomfort matters more than someone else's grief. They don't belong here. The loud part out loud. Karen tried to respond. She posted in the Willow Heights group, "I had no idea it was a charity event. I only wanted to protect the neighborhood." But the responses were swift. Stacy M. "You mean protect your idea of the neighborhood?" Luis G. "He handed out flyers. You ignored them." Maya R. "You didn't protect anyone. You embarrassed us." Deshaun didn't press charges. He didn't speak to reporters. But he did post a photo of the backyard, filled with people holding plates and wearing matching shirts, under a banner that read, "Service, Sacrifice, Solidarity." His caption read, "Sometimes silence is louder than shouting. But today we made some noise worth remembering. $8,762 raised for the Diaz Scholarship Fund." The post was shared over 20,000 times. Karen's world began to shrink. People she'd known for years stopped waving. The corner bakery she frequented quietly removed her VIP discount card. Even her best friend Trish stopped returning calls. She tried to brush it off. People are overreacting, she told herself. But when the local news anchor said, a so-called HOA member disrupted a peaceful community charity event, and her face filled the screen next to the words "social backlash mounts," she knew it wasn't going away. And then came the letter. Not a complaint, a petition signed by over 90 residents of Willow Heights. "We, the undersigned, request that Karen Whitlow cease and desist all enforcement actions under the self-appointed Neighborhood Standards Committee, which has no legal authority and does not represent our values as a community." The closing line, "We don't need policing. We need connection." Karen sat at her kitchen table, reading and rereading that line. She looked out the window toward Deshaun's house. The folding tables were gone. The banner was down. But the message remained. And in the pit of her stomach, something shifted. Not anger, not embarrassment, but the first flicker of shame. The kind that doesn't come from being caught. The kind that comes from realizing you were wrong. Part 2. Karen hadn't left her house in 5 days. The blinds stayed drawn. The coffee pot went untouched. Her phone, once a buzzing hive of HOA updates and weekend brunch invites, now lay face down and silent on the counter. Outside, life continued. Kids rode bikes, dogs barked, people gathered, but no one knocked on her door. Not anymore. The backlash hadn't stopped. The petition had gone public. A local blogger wrote an op-ed titled, "The Sound of Control, When Neighborhood Watch Becomes Neighborhood Harm." Karen's name was now shorthand in online forums for overstepping HOA Karens. Her quote, "They don't belong here," had become a meme. Even her old yoga studio sent her a message. "In light of recent events, and with respect to our inclusive values, we feel it's best for you to take space from the community." She stared at that sentence for a long time. Take space. She hadn't taken space in years. She'd filled it, controlled it, owned it, until now. Meanwhile, Deshaun Brooks was everywhere. Not by choice, but because people kept asking. He appeared in an interview on the evening news, calm, poised, and undeniably powerful in how little he needed to say. "This wasn't about me. This was about how fast we assume, about how often we judge before we ask, and about how kindness gets drowned out by suspicion until we make it loud again." He didn't say Karen's name. He didn't need to. The city heard him anyway. At the next city council meeting, more than 200 residents attended. It wasn't a protest, it was a conversation, but it was pointed. Speaker after speaker stood to share stories. A Latina nurse said she'd received 2 noise violations after hosting her niece's quinceañera. A gay couple said they'd been told their lawn decorations were in poor taste and not neighborhood appropriate. An elderly Vietnamese woman shared that she'd been photographed gardening without permission. All of them had one thing in common: the Neighborhood Standards Committee. Karen's name was mentioned 17 times. By the end of the evening, the city announced they would investigate the committee for harassment and impersonation of official authority. Then came the leak. An anonymous former committee member shared a folder of internal emails. One of them was from Karen. It read, If we don't stay vigilant, this place will start to look like the rest of the city, and we all know what that means. People interpreted it the way it sounded. The post went viral. Even her defenders, what few remained, went quiet. Karen tried to explain. She wrote a long message in the Willow Heights group. What I meant was, we have standards. I never intended to exclude anyone. But someone replied with a screenshot of her own words. Intent doesn't erase impact. Others followed. You tried to silence a celebration of service. You mistook culture for disruption. You said he didn't belong, and now you want forgiveness without understanding? She deleted the post, and finally she closed the group. Then came something Karen hadn't expected. Her niece, Rachel, a junior in college, sent her a message. It was short, but it hit deep. I used to admire how involved you were in your community. Now I just see control. You taught me to be proud of where we live, but I don't want to be proud if it means being blind. Karen sat in her car, reading the message over and over. Tears came slowly, not from embarrassment, from loss, from a crack forming inside. Days later, a knock at her door. She opened it cautiously. Standing there was Trish, her oldest friend, her former second-in-command. Trish looked tired, but determined. I wanted to see how you're doing, she said. Karen stepped aside wordlessly. They sat on the porch, the silence stretching. I messed up, Karen finally said. Trish nodded. Yeah, you did. Karen's voice was quiet. Do you think I'm a bad person? Trish sighed. I think you got used to thinking you knew what was best. And when someone different came along, you didn't trust it. You called it chaos, but it was just not you. Karen closed her eyes. I didn't want to be a villain. Trish's voice softened. Then don't end your story as one. Across the street, Deshawn was setting up another gathering. This time it was smaller. Just a backyard potluck. Something casual. Karen watched from the window. She didn't go over. Not yet. But she picked up a Tupperware dish and began filling it with the cornbread she used to make for block parties. Back when the neighborhood was younger, less fragile, more human. That night she wrote a letter. Not a post, not a speech, just a letter. Dear Deshawn, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement of my assumptions, of my ignorance, of my failure to ask a simple question instead of reaching for control. You gave back to this community in a way I didn't understand, and when I didn't understand, I judged. That's not leadership, that's fear. I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for what I didn't do. See you. I hope you'll accept this not as redemption, but as the first brick in a bridge I should have started building a long time ago. Karen. She didn't know if he'd read it. But the next morning the letter was gone from his porch, and in its place, left anonymously, was a small card. Kindness starts in silence, but it doesn't end there. The first thunderclap came at 3:42 p.m. Then the sky opened, flooding Willow Heights with sheets of rain. It had been dry for weeks, and the sudden storm was both a relief and a risk. By 5 p.m., power lines were sparking along Crestwood Avenue. A transformer burst near the corner park. City alerts buzzed on phones. Severe weather advisory, heavy winds, flash flood warnings, possible electrical fires. People stayed inside. Lights flickered, streets emptied. But at 5:24 p.m., the screaming started. Karen heard it first as a faint sound, like wind mixed with panic. Then it sharpened, a child's scream from 2 doors down. She rushed to the window and saw smoke, dark, rising, from the edge of the Miller family's garage. The same garage where 8-year-old Lucas Miller often played with his science kits and remote-controlled cars. Karen didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone to dial 911, but she wasn't the only one moving. Across the street, Deshawn Brooks had already vaulted over his fence. No gear, no shoes, just instinct. He reached the Miller's house in seconds. Smoke poured from the half-open garage. Mrs. Miller stood outside screaming, "Lucas is still in there!" Deshawn didn't wait. He ducked into the smoke. Karen ran outside, rain soaking her hair, her heart pounding. "Don't go in there!" someone yelled from a porch. But Deshawn was gone, into the thick blackness. 3 agonizing minutes passed, then 4. Then a shape appeared, blurry through the smoke. Deshaun stumbled out, coughing, one arm shielding his face. In the other, Lucas, limp but breathing. The boy coughed and gasped as the crowd surged forward. Paramedics arrived seconds later. One of them helped Deshaun sit down, placing an oxygen mask over his face. Karen stood frozen, soaked, shivering, not from the rain, from what she had just witnessed. A man she'd once called suspicious. A man she had reported for noise. A man she had judged by his skin and his music and his guess had just saved a child's life. The story broke before sunrise. Willow Heights hero saves child from fire. Deshaun Brooks, from charity organizer to lifesaver. Local news played the security footage on loop. Deshaun diving into smoke, reappearing with a child in his arms. The photo of him, soaked in rain, covered in ash, holding Lucas in front of the blazing garage, became iconic. But it wasn't the headline that changed Willow Heights. It was Karen. The next morning, she showed up at Deshaun's door. No makeup, no umbrella. Just a letter and a tray of cinnamon rolls. When he opened the door, still recovering with a bandage on his forearm, Karen looked up and said, "I came to thank you and to ask something." Deshaun raised an eyebrow. "I want to say it out loud," she said. "What I did before, reporting you, accusing you, trying to shut you down, it was wrong. I told myself I was protecting the neighborhood, but the truth is, I was protecting my comfort, at your expense." He said nothing. Karen continued, "You saved a child who wasn't yours, from a home that never welcomed you, and I realized something." Deshaun crossed his arms gently. "What's that?" Karen's voice cracked. "The neighborhood I thought I was protecting never really existed. Not until you helped build it." He stared at her, and for a long moment Karen thought he might close the door. But then he stepped back and said, "Come in. We have coffee." 3 weeks later, something remarkable happened. At the Willow Heights community meeting, normally quiet and poorly attended, more than 120 people showed up. Neighbors of all backgrounds. A new family from Nigeria brought meat pies. A single dad brought his teenage daughter to listen. Even Mr. Albright, the cranky man from the corner house, wore a t-shirt that read, "Respect rules." Deshaun stood to speak, but before he could, Karen stepped to the podium. She took a breath, looked around, and began. "I was wrong. I thought order meant safety. I thought silence meant peace. But it took a storm, and a fire, and a man I once doubted to show me that real safety comes from connection. I judge people for their music, their friends, their language, and even their joy. And now I want to rebuild, not fences, not committees, but trust." She turned to Deshaun. "Thank you for saving that boy, and thank you for giving us a second chance." The room erupted in applause. That summer, something new bloomed in Willow Heights. Instead of HOA notices, neighbors received handwritten invites. Backyard movie night, bring a blanket. Saturday cookout, featuring Naomi's famous mac and cheese. Help us paint the mural. Everyone welcome. The old fake HOA was officially disbanded. In its place, the Willow Heights Community Circle, founded by Deshaun and supported by residents, including Karen. No titles, no fines, no fear, just people, showing up, together. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the fire, Willow Heights unveiled a community mural at the entrance of the neighborhood. Painted across the wall, a swirl of color, hands, music, food, fire, rain. In the center, a silhouette of a man running through smoke, a child in his arms. Underneath, the words, "Not all noise is trouble. Some of it saves us." Beside it, a small bronze plaque, in honor of Deshaun Brooks and the power of being heard. Karen stood beside him that day, not as a gatekeeper, but as a neighbor. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She just held out a brush and helped finish the final stroke. The end, Tariq.